So Shefty talked on the Pat McAfee show today about the situation with Jamar Chase. He talked about really all the players who are currently potentially holding in at practice. Obviously, last night was the fourth straight practice. Today was the fifth straight practice that Jamar Chase did not participate in. Now, Chase did actually catch the ball a little bit today on the sideline. He also did go ahead and, based on what I understand, he is practicing after practice. He's just not practicing during the allocated time during practice. So with that being said, Schefter has a little bit of a snippet of what he thinks is going on, and I want to preface this by saying he does say this in this, but I want to make sure this point is kind of known. He does say in this that 100% this is his speculation. It's not based on facts. It's not based on anything that he has heard. This is based on pure speculation. So just a little side note there. Remember to take everything he's saying here with a grain of salt for that said reason.
You think would be fair?
Okay, so I think what would be fair would obviously depend upon what situation I am in, because there's a lot of teams that would take Brandon Ayuk. Now, would they give up trade compensation that's big enough for the Niners and also pay him? Who knows? But whenever you think about, like, how do you end this situation? You go to the Saquon.
I think everybody's trying to figure that out right now.
So I think you go to what Saquon Barkley ended up doing with the Giants, which was like throw out the deal pretty much. Let's sign a 1-year deal. Instead of the franchise tag, and then normally that 1-year deal though would have a no.
And then they do show this on the screen, so I want to go ahead and talk about this real fast. So his top paid wide receivers heading into 2024: Justin Jefferson, $35 million, $32 million for AJ Brown. So right now, Jamar Chase. I know he starts talking about Brandon Ayuk. I'll skip a little bit forward here. When he talks about Chase, but it's all the same concept. What they're doing is just talking about all these receivers that want new contracts. Kind of how you have to go about it when it comes to, the team here. And obviously, when Chase gets his new contract, he's going to reset the wide receiver market, so he can get more than $35 million, which is more than Justin Jefferson. Whether or not you think he deserves that, you have to keep in mind this is how football works. Players always get more than whoever the highest paid guy is, the next man up mentality. So kind of skipping forward a tad bit here until Schefter talks about his opinion on this. Let me go ahead and play this.
Where he was unhappy. It's just like with how public.
Amari Cooper just got a raise from the Browns, $5 million in incentives. They guaranteed half his money for this year, half the 20. Like, there are always things that you could do and adjust. And honestly, it's up to both sides to figure out what can they both live with and move forward doing here. That's the whole key to the situation. And right now, I think everybody's struggled to do that so far, where not even a week into training camp. And so they're trying to piece it together. And in all honesty, I don't know that we've reached a critical point yet to where you feel like, oh boy, we've got to get this done. We're not even in August yet, right? The season doesn't open until September. And I think that there'll be a little bit more urgency to this deal and Tristan Wirfs in Tampa and Matthew Judon in New England and Jamar Chase in Cincinnati and CeeDee Lamb in Dallas and every single unresolved contractual situation. I think that sometimes they get done right at camp and right at the start of camp. If they don't get done then, it feels like there's a little window here where there's some wiggle room where the urgency doesn't really kick in until we get a little bit later into camp. That's my own feeling. I can't prove that. There's nothing scientific behind that. But again, I think sometimes when you miss that initial window, there's nothing that pushes both sides to get it done until we're a little bit further into camp.
And that is a very interesting take, because I kind of agree with him when it comes to the Jamar Chase situation. I don't think we're going to see any type of contract done, I've said before, until at least the end of this season. It's possible we don't see a contract till the end of next season. But I think Mike Brown, I believe he said something about like casting the die, which means it's not going to happen anytime this season anyway. But yeah, no, I don't think there's any urgency, because it's the same situation with Trey Hendrickson. At the end of the day, the Bengals realized that they have this guy on contract for the next 2 years. They picked up his 5th-year option. They have him this year and next year. So there's just no urgency to say we need to give him a new contract. We need to pay him now, because reality-wise, they're looking at it and saying, well, he can't refuse to play. He'll get fined heavily thanks to the new CBA. So he has to play. He has to accept it. He has to just do whatever we say. So I think there is that kind of perspective. And then you have the players who hold in or hold out. And I think a lot of that isn't really about 100% the players. I mean, sorry, about the team, like, reacting. I think a lot of that is the fans, and they want the fans to get upset and say stuff and, you know, voice their opinion, which was intense then, or will start this whole thing where it's like, okay, now the team has to do it because the fans are upset. So I agree with Sheffy here. I think that there is really no push in any way possible, because even if Chase, let's say, for example, and I'm not saying he is sitting out or holding out. Again, I still trust Zach Taylor when he says that they have a plan. But let's say he is. Let's say, hypothetically speaking, he is, right? He's holding out of this, you know, and doesn't want to play. Well, until he gets a new contract, obviously. At the end of the day, the football team still moves on without him. And that's just the fact of the matter is. You know, Chase and Burrow still have great chemistry together. They still know what they're doing. They still play at a very high level. And then you got to look at outside of Chase and Burrow, it's more reps for the younger guys. And that's really what it is at the end of the day. You get more reps for Jermaine Burton, Trenton Irwin, Yoshi, Chuck Sizzle. You know, you get more reps for all these guys because Chase is not on the field. So, again, I'm in the mentality of I just want to pay him now and not push this down the road. Because the more you push this down the road, the more money that you end up paying the player. It's a great example of the Cowboys, for example, with Dak Prescott. They could have paid him in the spring. They would have saved themselves a crap ton of money. They haven't paid him yet. And because they haven't paid him yet, now Jordan Love got paid and Tua got paid. So now whatever they were going to pay Dak Prescott just automatically went up in price because the fact that they waited. Waiting does not help you out, right? And it never does. And also, another side note here, a lot of people blame the players for, you know, holding out, holding in, because the fact of like, oh, you know, they're greedy or they're selfish and they want all this money, blah, blah, blah. It's not, usually it's never the players, by the way. I think a lot of people, some people realize this, some people don't. The player really has almost no control in the situation. It's usually just the agent. So, for example, Jordan Love did come out and say that the reason why he was holding in was because his agent told him to do so. And that he had pretty much no control in the contract talks. He had no say-so in the contract talks. He would just get updated, and his agent was the one working everything out. And a lot of these players, they just say, okay, you know what? Whatever my agent says to do, I'm going to do, because I'm paying my agent to have my best interest at heart. So at the end of the day, a lot of times, you know, we blame these players. It's not really these players. It's a lot of it is the agents, and they are going to try to get the most money because they get paid the most money, right? So at the end of the day, I don't really think there is much, and I agree with Shefty here. I think he hit it right on the head. There isn't really any type of, you know, momentum that would want, that makes the team want to pay you faster.
Well, it would make sense what you're saying, because if you've ever seen the front office or the scouting department or the people that would be in the negotiation with a veteran player, first couple of days of training camp, they all want to see how their guys are doing. How are our rookies doing? How are the people that we scouted doing? GMs want to see how the draft class is doing, how the offensive line's maybe gelling, how D-line's gelling. So this first week of camp, there's a big hey, we want to see how this team is. So maybe there is a little bit of a distraction from getting business done because they're trying to see how the boys are doing that wanted to be there, as opposed to those that don't want to be there.
And it goes both ways, right? For the first padded practice today, Matthew Judon in New England, not practicing. Tristan Wirfs in Tampa, not practicing, because the pads went on and they know that the risk is a little bit greater. And then the player can send a message by not being a part of practice. And it's the exact reason that the Packers got the deal done on Friday night before their very first padded practice on Saturday. Again, that's not a hard and fast deadline, but they don't want to start padded practices on Saturday.
Here's what I'll say about the whole thing with injury, because obviously that is the reason why you hold out and not you want a new contract, because you don't want to play, get hurt, and then in theory, you know, now you lost your guaranteed money or you lost your money. I will say that with quarterbacks is a lot different, and I feel like there's more pressure with quarterbacks just because of how much guaranteed they get. I mean, they get crazy money guaranteed in their contracts. But I feel like with wide receivers, like, for example, Jamar Chase, right? If Jamar Chase goes out there and plays every single training camp practice, and he, let's say he does get hurt, right? Hypothetically speaking, knock on wood, he gets hurt, right? He's not going to get paid any less money than he would if he sat out and didn't play and didn't get hurt. I don't think he would make any more money or any less money. I think the contract would still be exactly the same. So I feel like that narrative of like players don't want to play because of injury, I think offensive linemen 100% that applies to, because obviously there's a lot of offensive linemen, and at the end of the day, you get injured, you gotta replace them, whatever. I feel like offensive linemen don't recover from injuries as fast as wide receivers. I feel like quarterbacks, that's very important as well. Wide receivers, corners, defensive linemen, I feel like, yes, getting injured does affect your bottom line in your paycheck at the end of the day. But wide receivers and corners, I feel like it doesn't as much. Not as much. It does affect it a little bit, but not to a point where I think there's actually a detriment to not going out there and playing. So, yeah, I just don't think Chase would get paid any less. I really don't. Because even if we're like, well, we're not going to pay you because you got injured. Okay, cool. Like, in a year, however long he would be hurt for, a month or two, like at the worst case scenario, a month or two, he'll come back and still be 100% healthy. So, yeah.
Without their quarterback, just like these players in New England and Tampa, they don't want to be out there for a padded practice when there's money on the line. Jamar Chase in Cincinnati, as of last night, 4 straight days, 4 practices, no Jamar Chase. Now, I know that the Bengals are saying they have a plan, but I think Jamar Chase has got a plan too. And let's see how it plays out over time.
Seems like he's executing it right now. Everybody's talking about T. Higgins. Jamar Chase is like, yeah, the reason why you're not paying T. Higgins is because, you see.
See, I don't know if I 100% agree with that mentality. I know Mike Brown did come out and say how, like, the pie example, and, you're not going to pay T. Higgins because Jamar Chase needs to get paid. But I feel like in reality, that might not 1,000% be the truth. I feel like there's a number, and again, there is certain, there's certain truths to that, what he just said. Like, you're not going to pay T. Higgins because Jamar Chase's contract. But I feel like there is just a certain number the Bengals do not see T. Higgins being worth. And T. Higgins probably sees that number of what he's worth. And I think that's really the big problem here. Because if you're like, well, the reason why they're not paying T. Higgins is because they don't want to pay Jamar Chase and T. Higgins, or they can't, there's a number that they've already offered T. Higgins. And if he agrees to it, they would sign him today. Right now, they would sign him to a contract. So it has nothing to do with the fact that he isn't, the fact is he wants too much money. And I guess more or less his agent, not really him as much. I mean, I'm sure he's agreeing with his agent, but my point is his agent's the one who works out the contract. But he just wants too much money. And I think it's more than just they can't pay him. I'm sure they could figure out a way to work the contract he wants plus Jamar Chase's contract. I think it's more or less that they don't value him that much. I don't think they value him at the number that he wants. We don't know what that number is. There's been rumors that it's a Michael Pittman deal. Very possible it is. But at the end of the day, I just don't think they value him at the level that he wants. And they offered him a contract based on rumors. It was considered disrespectful by his club. And I think that's kind of what this is it's less of, well, we can't afford him. It's more like we don't see him as valuable as he wants to be.
Hello. And what did owner Mike Brown say, Nick, in interview about paying everybody? What did he say?
Basically
he said that
go ahead, Chef.
He said the all season is the time to do the deal, and that he said the die has been cast. That was the phrase he used. The die has been cast, and he made it sound like there wouldn't be a deal until after the season. Now, again, we'll see. That's how he feels. That's how the team feels. And I'm sure the player will also have something to say about that.
And what else did he say, Nick? He said something about being able to pay everybody, or was that kind of like what was the?
Yeah, it was insinuated, saying he talked about the salary cap being a pie, and that everyone needs a piece of the pie, and some pieces are bigger than others, and it's not going to be enough for everybody.
I'm intrigued because it's Cincinnati football, baby. We all know.
Yeah.
You know, like we've talked about this particular situation for the Cincinnati Bengals since Joe.
Yeah, and again, like I said, I think it's a situation with Chase is completely different, in my opinion, than the situation with T. I think the situation with Chase really comes down to his camp winning a record-setting contract, and the Bengals kind of being a little cheap on that matter, and I don't think they want to give him a record-setting contract. And I think that it's kind of like, hey, listen, this is more of principle, I feel like, from Chase's side than it is about, like the money. It's more about principle of, I want to be paid more than Justin Jefferson. And then from T's angle, I think it's more of like, I just want to get the money I think I deserve and the money I think I'm worth. And yeah, so I think it's a never-ending battle. But as Schefter says, I agree that there is a situation where I feel like there is no pressure. And if there's no pressure, a team's not going to really care, about trying to get the situation done, but trying to get the contract done with. So we'll have to wait and see what ends up happening, guys. But tell me down below your thoughts, opinions. See you guys next one. Peace.